Hi everyone, good afternoon. I hope everyone's awake post a wonderful lunch. Good to catch up. We've got lovely, fantastic panelists on the stage. The topic for today is what everyone is chasing nowadays is business, right? Revenue. So performance marketing plays a very important role. Very important to know how brands have scaled up from a 0 to X growth, okay, and how D2C brands, high performance brands are, taking up this challenge and doing something very differently, different approaches, different strategies to draw attention, generate revenue there. So we'll have good discussions around it. We've got fantastic panel from various categories, right from beauty to personal care to consumer electronics and fintech as well. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining in. I'll start off with Prajakta because I know her since a couple of years and we've been working since a couple of years now.
Hi.
Hi. Prajakta, on your side, when you represent Tira, right?
Yeah.
Very important brand. Uh, at a growth stage, my wife is one of the
Good to
prime
know.
user of Tira.
Good to know. Good to know.
Offline as well as online, right? So, in the beauty space,
Yeah.
wherein you have so much of competition going on,
Yeah.
within that, how do you balance between, let's say, the visibility of it, visibility of Tira, and
Sure.
between Tira and the performance side of it, wherein you need to generate revenue, you need to have conversions,
Right.
getting new, acquiring new customers there.
Right.
How do you balance both of them at your side?
So basically, consistency is the key. This is what we have learned over now 3 years of the business. When we started, we did a very big launch that gave us a very big tent pole, right? And that also made everyone, because we all are digital novices to say, right? Because this is a very new age sort of a media that we all are operating on. When we did that, we understood, okay, this is how it works. And obviously, when you do Omni, is what helps a lot for the brand, right? At the same time, obviously, you can't keep on doing the same thing and also not invest that much amount every month. So what we do is to balance it out, because obviously we have our performance and our revenue guardrails and ROAS guardrails that we
Yes.
have, right? So that doesn't go anywhere. But to support it, we try and balance it with, of course, influencer marketing. And we also have, because we have around 22 to 23 stores right now in 6 cities in India.
Right.
So we do a lot of store activations across
I've seen
the
that.
store.
I've seen
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
You must have seen, like he was also
I
telling
guess
me.
everyone's seen that. Yeah. Who misses that?
Yeah, so that's what we do. That is for store activation, and that also helps in the branding, right? Because that's how Tira is known. It's online and offline both. So for online, yes, we do certain campaigns. Recently, we launched a very consumer-specific campaign for Gen Z, for millennial, for a Gen X sort of an audience, talking directly to the consumer, right? So we try and balance and we learn from our mistakes. That's what we have done till now. It's not that we are experts. I would not say that, because in digital media, everything is evolving day on day, right?
It's very dynamic now.
Very, very dynamic. And it's very difficult due to the attribution loss
Yes.
to actually pinpoint that, okay, this worked and this didn't work.
Right.
So what we do is, what we have understood is to balance it, because we have to also justify the spends that we have done in the upper funnel
Correct.
media, right? So
Correct.
what we do is we set guardrails.
Right.
Whenever we start any campaign, we always set guardrails, even for a branding campaign, right? For example, what metrics will go up? And then obviously we tally it back once the campaign is over. We see what other, brand metrics are there, like DLS and all of those things that happen. But at the same time, there are other matrices also that probably would have gone up, right? So that's what we try and then learn, then revamp, revise it in another campaign. But to answer, we have somewhere around 60-40 ratio currently. And that includes all sorts of branding, right?
Yeah.
And there are tentpole events as well. So during our tentpole events, we scale up massively. And then we have BAU branding as well. And of course, there are store activations. So it works in all. There is no, I don't have that answer that, okay, only digital media branding works.
Right.
Or they don't work in silo, for sure.
Right, right.
They don't. They cannot. I mean, they cannot operate like that. Each medium has to talk to each other, and only then you will have the results.
Right.
So this is how we are trying to, get the balance.
Oh, very well said, because at our side also at Audience Pro, we are connected to many brands. There are over 300 plus brands using our platform, and we keep on, my customer success team is busy working on ROAS, right? ROAS, CPIs, multiple such KPIs are being followed and delivered. कभी-कभी लगता है वो business करने ही बैठे हुए हैं वहाँ पे, right? It's more of a business game for everyone,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
धंधा कितना हो, that's the main question here. It's not about branding or performance. Even if you run branding campaigns, at the end it's like, okay, what did it deliver? Organically or maybe through any of the audiences, right? Cool. One more just small question there. So, I'm very curious to know that there are two kind of buyers, right? One is very impulsive buyer, okay, who would just go see something and then buy it without the need of it. My wife falls under that. And the second would be need-based, right? Somebody who was in need and would go and log in or maybe go to a store and buy it. Are there different strategies for these sort of buyers, or is it the same strategy that is being followed?
Yeah, so I will term it this way. There is a replenishment journey that a consumer in a beauty would follow, wherein they have their cart decided, right? They know what to buy, and they buy probably on a quarterly or a monthly basis, depending on the consumer. And there are, of course, viral trends, right? For example, Fenty launched in India, and we are the exclusive partners.
Right.
So we knew that, okay, this is a viral brand, and that's what then obviously the sale gets impacted due to the virality. So yes, there are two types of consumers. Those who go behind the virality, and those who are loyal, like extremely loyal, not to Tira, right? But overall as a beauty category. Like I am one of those, right? And especially I think that loyalty segment falls about 35 plus sort of because I think we are the ones who started using beauty e-com way earlier than probably today's 18 to 24, right? And we are not on Reddit maybe. Right, but 18 to 24 is on Reddit, the age bracket.
Yeah.
So they
and
know
35 would not be so cost sensitive also, right?
Absolutely.
Brand loyalty is what matters, not the cost is what they're looking at.
Correct.
Primarily,
I mean,
right?
what
Somebody
I want,
wants a Fendi
what
would
I
go for a
need
Fendi.
or what I want is more important for me.
Right.
Like if I have been using a Laura Mercier setting powder, I'll continue using it.
Right.
I won't probably switch it unless and until a peer gives me a very good review of an upcoming brand which is trending. But that is very different to an 18 to 24 consumer. They want virality. Like if you take K-beauty, today snail mucin, I think even guys would know snail mucin. Right? That became so viral, not only on Reddit, but on Instagram, everywhere. Yeah. So we talk to these consumers as per their needs. So we know there are the ones who are just buying K-beauty. So we have certain campaigns for just K-beauty. Yeah. We have replenishment journeys as well. For the consumers. So we also do it by age, by tiers. So all of that is also managed.
Got it. Great. So moving on to Me Too in the similar category, which is more focused towards personal care. Me Too on Brand Factory. I've seen your brands also on Honasa, which is the main parent brand. There are multiple categories of skincare products. There are some scientific products also, right, which are more focused towards dermat, right? In such larger categories, what sort of strategy works for you? Is the same strategy that has been used across categories, keeping in mind the CACs, right? That would be one of the challenge which you would see. How in terms of the unit of economics wherein multiple categories fall under, right? What's the strategy there for you?
So, as I'm not sure how many people know Honasa, but Honasa is an umbrella beauty and personal care company, and we have 7-8 different brands in this segment. Mamaearth is our parent brand, but we now have 6 other brands like Dermaco, Aqualogica, Dr. Sheth's. So I'll also talk about why have different brands in the same category, in the same segment. And then within the brand, how do we scale categories? Like I think
Right.
it's divided into two. So the first key point, at least at Honasa, what we look at is consumer need, right? And what is, so when we started with Mamaearth, it was about natural. And each of our brands, if you look at in the basket, have a very strong consumer proposition. While Mamaearth talks about natural as a proposition, we realized and during COVID, natural was like booming in general, right? But we also realized that a consumer doesn't have all 8 products of Mamaearth, or they don't want all categories to be natural. For example, serums is a treatment product. The consumer doesn't want a natural serum because they want that product to sort of work for them. And that's where the need for another brand, which was not at all cannibalizing the other proposition, and very clear proposition of Mamaearth being natural and then Dermaco being completely actives-led brand. And that's how each of the brands sort of had their own legs and own propositions that consumers wanted to buy, and that's how we built out the brands. And if I talk about brands, you know, how, in a brand itself, you have different categories like a face wash, serum, moisturizers, and in any segment, right? In foods, you would have like bars and cereals, etc. At least the strategy that has worked for us is lead by or find your hero product, right? We use by iteration, you know, putting multiple categories out there, which is that hero product that actually drives your acquisition and helps you scale efficiently and builds that consumer trust. Post that, you'd use that RTB to actually get consumers on to try on, cross-sell the other categories and build the brand. So at least when you're younger, you know, when you're doing that 0 to 1 journey, and you have limited budgets, you can't be testing all different categories at once. Find the product which is liked by consumers in a smaller cohort, scale that, becomes your acquisition driver, and then build the trust and use that as to build cross-sell different categories.
Makes sense, because one person would, as you rightly said, one person wouldn't buy all the 8 products, and you need to create that need. So creating a need is also very important to diversify and then probably scale it further, right? Great. Okay, I'll move to Siddharth. Siddharth, on Paytm, right? We've all been using, and everyone sitting in the room has used it and has been using it at multiple modes. On Paytm, with 15 years of journey, there have been multiple strategies that have been used or maybe learned, unlearned. How do you feel that the current age of brands, the high-performance brands, are standing apart from the strategies which they have been using versus the legendary or the legacy brands like yours?
So I think it's a really good question, and I think 2 things that high-performance brands always have done differently.
Yes.
One is they are able to build sustainable growth loops. Self-sustaining growth loops almost, where when you bring a person in, when you bring a consumer in through, say, a tentpole event, somebody spoke about that, Prajakta spoke about that. So if there's a tentpole event or you have a tentpole SKU or a tentpole product, and you bring people in through that, they figure out the best journeys to take the people on. And, kind of make a place for themselves in the consumer's life by dint of the fact that you figure out what enables a consumer from point to point in their life, right? And I think it's all very data-driven. There's no guessing or assumptions around it. It can be very data-driven. Sometimes you have deterministic data, sometimes you have heuristic data, but you can do it either way. For example, and it's not just Paytm, but also across Hotstar or, Amazon, etc., where I work. It was about, if a person comes in through a particular, everybody has a different product, but if a person comes in through your lead product or your tentpole product or any particular product, what is the next most likely step for them? Where are they going in that evolution of their journey with you or in that need, right? And you can do it through, we did it in Amazon by diving deep and understanding across, more than 100 billion transactions. What is the second step to a product A, right? And where
event by event learning is what matters.
Exactly. And where we didn't have that, for example, in Hotstar, when I was building it up, and we went from almost 0 to 200 million consumers, we didn't have that data because it was coming in, people were coming in so fast through our tentpole events, right? So we used a lot of heuristics there where we understood where they are coming from, what kind of devices are they using, a lot of those kind of signals to build the next step of their journey, like what is the next step thing that they would want, right? So setting up, and then when they get off that thing, you need to figure out why did they abandon at that point or why did they leave at that point. And again, you need to dive deep and understand everybody who stayed on, why did they stay on, everybody who's left, why did they leave, find out the differences. So it's very data driven. And you correct that and you bring them back into the loop.
Right.
So these are examples of self-sustaining loops that they've built, right? And I think the second point is being able to, very connected to this, is being able to build a consumer insight which is driven by your growth marketing itself. So there's always these traditional methods of building consumer insights and personas, right? Where you do your primary, secondary research, et cetera, qual quant, et cetera, UNA studies, et cetera. But when we use growth marketing in Hotstar, for example, we try to understand why people were reacting in a certain way to a certain kind of communication on performance, whereas people who were not reacting, some people were reacting very well to a Virat Kohli walking into bat. Some people were not reacting to that, and they were reacting more to a six being hit by just about anybody. And it was crazy because the understood wisdom is that when a match gets interesting, more people come in, right? But then we understood from that data, we saw that there are cohorts. This is a fan cohort, right?
Correct.
Which doesn't care about whether a six is being hit, they care
Correct.
more about Virat Kohli coming into bat,
Correct.
right? And so you need to try and break down that segment and keep refining it and reshaping it such that you collect all the fan idol worshippers, we call them, all the idol worshippers at one point and then serve that campaign up to them versus all the excitement seekers at another point and serve up the six being hit to them. And so that way you create your different cohorts and you're effectively forming a consumer persona through all the data you have on growth marketing, right? And Paytm kind of does the same thing, or at least moving in that direction. A lot of other, Amazon kind of does the same thing. So I think these are high-performing brands who've used data very powerfully.
Yes.
And with AI coming in, I don't even know where this will go. But essentially, they've used data very powerfully to get on that journey.
Right. Very well said. In fact, 2 points here. One is learning about the cohorts, okay, and second is the consumer intelligence, which is getting implied for the next step, right, to grow it further. And yes, in all the new age brands, D2C, that's the plus point which we all see. They're using data very effectively, right, in terms of their own data, or it could be the second party data. They've been using that very effectively in a very deterministic manner. They moved a long way there. But yeah, very well said. Let's move to Paras. Hi, Paras. So, consumer electronics, very different vertical. The buying cycles are not as frequent as personal care or the beauty or maybe on the fintech side where everyone is doing some transactions or the other. In terms of building consideration, right, which becomes a very important key for you, so that the person comes again and again, or maybe the span of buying cycle comes down. How do you build consideration and drive performance to these sort of consumers there?
Yeah, so honestly, yeah, it's a very tough category, borderline cursed, I would say.
Yeah.
Like I was looking at the data, like what's the gap between purchases of two earbuds?
Earbuds.
Brand agnostically, like on Flipkart. That period is 11 months. And almost always the brand is not repeated.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
People look for the most exciting product at that instant. So honestly, CAC, like LTV, repeat percentage, these don't mean too much for our category. What matters is how many people will be in the market to purchase the product today.
Right.
A, I have to capture most of them. B, I have to do it really well, like service them really well, so they don't push away people who will be in the market next month or in future after that. Plus, we have been a bootstrapped brand. We are profitable. The market leaders are way too big compared to us. So any channel which is a pull channel, like either it's Amazon, Flipkart, or Google for that matter, that gets eliminated for us entirely.
Okay.
Right, because if we go to fight there, we will bleed money. And
Right.
almost everyone who started with us who went on that path died, like they're nowhere. So we were very sure from the beginning that since we don't have the muscle, probably our only strength is our wit, and we have to look at places where the market leader is not looking because it's not worth their time.
Right.
So for example, D2C was a very small portion of everyone's business. Like 95% business was happening on marketplaces.
Marketplaces.
We focused on that 5%. We compounded year on year. Today we get about 2 CR website visitors annually.
Wow.
Who convert at more than 2% conversion rate. And that is what keeps us profitable. Only because we focused on that part. And we can't spend too much on things like branding, consideration. So, I was discussing with her also just now. She was like, how much are you building into, how much are you investing into creating consideration or top of funnel? I said, I can only put the amount of money that I can forget about. And
Right.
that for us is as low as 50,000 actually.
Right. Right.
We are on a run rate of 30 CR annually, but that's all we spend monthly
Nice.
on creating top of funnel. So we'll go for creators who have very low followers but very high views. We'll capture them early in the journey. We will catch on to the trends, like 500 Days of Summer, the series was trending on Netflix. So we recreated that I Love the Smiths kind of a video, and it got 6.5 million views. But the amount we paid for it was not even 10,000. So that's the only thing we do for top of funnel, and then we fine tune our bottom of funnel and middle of funnel through multiple platforms, like be it Meta, be it partners like Cred. Like we were the first electronics brand on Cred when no one was ready to
Okay.
come. This is 2019, I guess. So we just keep finding places where
So
no one is
offers
paying
would
attention.
also play an important role in this.
Yeah, see, we have to get attention. So we can either get attention from things like social media, where others are not overthinking, but we overthink about that. Other is, offer callouts also work. That gets attention.
And how about influencer marketing? Like, does that play any role here?
Yeah, so we
You use it effectively?
almost no one can really attribute how much revenue comes through influencers, but we can look at backwards. That question that you see in a lot of places, where did you hear about us? That's a very important question, not just for hotels, but also for every D2C brand. So for our post checkout experience, we ask them, how did you get to know about us?
Okay.
More than 21% people got to know about us through Instagram.
Okay.
And that is when we were not even running Instagram ads. We were purely doing social. I was like, I have to keep doing this. This is working. I don't have to think about this 50. I have to keep doing it. Other was like word of mouth. So 21%, again, people were those who heard it from a friend. Now, this happened because we worked on something shareable. So if let's say you have to buy any earbuds, okay, you will straight away, the default that will come to your head is, let's say, boat or a noise or a maybe. But if I have something that you can brag about in front of your friends, probably you will consider me also. So we highlight our differentiators, like we have this Leaf AI sound app, which takes a hearing test, customizes the sound. It's a cool product. It's a shareable product. Like you could tell your friends about it.
Right.
That gets us attention. So things like this we have to do to
Nice.
be in a red ocean market.
Got it. Got it. And I'm sure product innovation plays another important role wherein you attract people, and even cost would play an important role there.
Yeah, both
Right?
these actually.
I see ANCs coming in within 600, 700 bucks.
Yeah.
Within 1,000 bucks, right?
So yeah, for us, I honestly think the magic happens at sourcing level and manufacturing level. Last year, we moved 100% manufacturing to India. We employ more than 100 people indirectly. But it doesn't save much cost, honestly, because the duty structure keeps changing. It's higher again. But the kind of grip that we have got on quality control, that's insane. I would never move back manufacturing to China, even if it was costing 10 rupees
All
and more
is
expensive.
made in India.
Yeah. And so there are two terms, like IQC is input quality control, what comes in, that gets 99.9% approval. Then is OQC, output quality control. We convert 98% of the components into final products with all QC approved. Like we are the only brand in our category which offers 10-day returns on their website.
Okay.
This again becomes something worth talking about because the other people are not doing it.
Right.
So we do it, and we do it really well. So everything, and like you were saying, product innovation, right? That also works great for us because my competitors are not doing it. That is why it works even better. We don't even spend too much money on it, but it still works because others are not doing anything about it.
Got it. Very cost-effective way of managing the input versus the output also.
Yeah, not
right?
by
At the
choice.
production side
I would be
to
happy to raise
acquisition.
$100 billion tomorrow so I can hyperscale, but it's okay. If I
Got
don't
it.
have the choice, I do with what the cards that are dealt.
Nice, nice. Okay. The next question would be around challenges. I'm sure the road, the journey which you guys have taken up, right, that's not as smooth as it looks like, right? There would be multiple hurdles which have come in, learning, unlearning of it, bouncing back, implementing the various different strategies, figuring out what has worked, what has not worked. So let me ask each one of you, in terms of challenges, like Mitu, for you, what would be the one challenge or the hurdle that you have faced and you've learned from it and bounced back and that has worked?
Many, I would say,
It's a dynamic world now, so
Yeah.
that would be
It's,
across.
when you're scaling brands from 0 to 1, and I think you spoke very well on, while you did speak about consumer electronics, like CACs are high and it's one transaction because the customer's here and now. That's the reality even for beauty, if you ask me, right? Because the consumer, the Gen Zs are so experimental, impulsive. It's very here and now gratification, right? While scaling brands, and even we have very low budgets when the brands are younger, Meta is the only channel that we sort of also rely on, at least in the initial journeys, and constantly optimizing on the right ROAS, the right, what is it that leads to that? Every time, you launch something and the ROAS is lesser, that's where, how do you optimize on? We do look at ROAS as not a hurdle, but how it's a signal that something in the campaign is not working, and then identifying whether it's targeting, whether it's creative, whether it is cohorting, segmentation that's not working, and then reiterating it and going back and forth. And I think that's I won't say it's the biggest hurdle, but I think that's an everyday journey. And once something clicks and once you understand that, I think doubling down on that is a great high to then sort of scale up the brands. Yeah.
Got it, got it. Paras, for you,
Of course, like
the same question comes.
yeah.
to
So
you.
we have to be profitable on every transaction. Like I
Right.
said, LTVs
Right.
don't mean anything for us. So of course, CAC becomes an important point. And I have my views very strong on CAC. Like I can sell a product at 8,000 by spending 5,000 on CAC. Doesn't mean I should do it because
Yeah.
the person would buy it because you bombarded them with ads. But what their experience is also dependent on how much they bought it for. So you have to have a, I don't know, price CAC market fit also probably. So we think very simply about these things, like where is the market today, majority? What price point do I need to be in order to take it away from the market leader?
Yeah.
Can't be too low because then no one cares because they just bought it for price. And then we have a thumb rule, ki theek hai, if our gross profit is X, we cannot spend more than X by 2 on CAC.
Got it.
Now look backwards. Now you have to have your manufacturing cost. That's something which you can control. You can't go low on component quality because then it'll come and haunt you in CAC after a few months. So yeah, and then for a brand in our position, CAC also becomes a moving target. Today it's working here, tomorrow it's working there. So at every time we are figuring out what will be a low CAC channel for us next month and which one will be scalable out of those. What happens if the current channel gets into the eyes of someone and they see low CAC here and they increase the bid
They
pressure, what's our
increase the
fallback
bid,
plan?
yeah.
So it's like kind of a moving target, the CAC bid. But if you keep moving with the target, things compound over a certain period of time, and then you will start to see that spillover effect on marketplaces also, Q-commerce also.
Right.
Right, you will spend 1,000 on ads, it will show only created 2,000, but you have gotten orders of 10,000 because people got to know that you are available there.
Got it. So dynamic CAC is something which becomes a very big challenge, right? Prajakta, for you, the same question.
Yeah. I think creatives for us, and in general also, I think creatives are the root
Yes.
of everything that you do, right? And of course, it is a broad term when I say it, but at the same time, I remember that this is like the oldest principle of marketing, right? That think like a consumer. While you are communicating it to the consumer, but you are from the brand side. So I would generally think that, okay, this is what as a brand I want to convey. But is the consumer understanding what are you trying to convey?
The
Is it
storytelling
their
part of it.
language? Is
Yeah.
it their tone? Is it their color? If it's not, let's please go back and
Yes.
experiment. And creative is everything. Like whatever amount you spend today, whatever output you get today, may it be ROAS, may it be attributed ROAS or blended ROAS, right? Anything that you do, it's nothing to do with that, right? It's all about how do you speak to the consumer. Are they liking it? Are they resonating with it? Is very, very, very important, I think. And in every journey, right? And therefore, of course, the way that he spoke about the journeys, right? The customer journeys, that's where your communication is very important, right? What are you communicating to the consumer? Is it what they are looking for? Is it the brand that they're looking for? For example, in a T1, in monsoons, probably there is a hair care situation always, right? For
Yes.
females, the hair go frizzy. They're like, due to the humidity, increased humidity. Are you communicating it rightly to the consumer? Are you also changing the themes of the creatives that you always deploy?
The hookness plays an important role,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
People
a
need to
lot.
engage before they buy.
A lot. And I understand that there will be a lot of impressions that would go before they clicking on it, but that will make them click, that they will remember it at least, that
Make them
okay,
think over it.
exactly. And that's what, I remember the brand that they spoke about
Yes.
something, then probably go on Google or do something. But that's the hook. Nothing else is, I think, for me, in the experience that I've come from MyGlam, from Sugar, till Tira today, and even at Book My Show when I was, creative plays the role in everything.
Very important fact, yeah. In terms of building the connect, hookness, and the storytelling, which becomes a part of the overall creative strategy, very important to be implemented there as well. Siddharth, for you, what would be one challenge that you would have faced?
So I think, a lot of, initially, there's a lot of backing for scale and growth, etc., and people don't look much at profitability at that point.
Yes.
Very different from Paras, actually. He's doing the right thing, but
Correct.
the rest of the misguided world
I know.
runs after growth and sacrifices everything else. And I think that's not even the hardest part. The hardest part is after you've grown to a certain scale, how do you keep growing? And this is generally...
How do you sustain and then
Yes,
take
this
it
is
forward?
generally where questions keep getting asked, like, are you profitable? What's your CAC, ROI, etc., etc. Compounding that is if your product becomes a bit commoditized, right? And we've seen that in most industries, right? Commoditization is now rampant. Whether you call it commoditization or Me Too brands or whatever it erodes value and it erodes, differentiation, which then starts impacting the results you're getting on your performance or your growth initiatives, right? So one is that thing, that commoditization. Second thing is over time your brand Tomer, whatever you want to call it, also fluctuates, right? And this also has an impact on your performance initiatives. And so these were the two things I found the most, I've found are very difficult. Very few people are able to, trump these challenges. And I think some things that I have done in the past and I've seen people do in the past is, one, of course, you look at things in conjunction, right? Tomer, brand, etc. And convincing people is another difficult thing on this front, right? But you need to convince them. And then there are tools like Ads Data Hub, I don't know, where you're looking at your awareness and your performance all together and you're able to isolate each bucket. And so running that has been quite helpful for us, right? Second thing is I always retain the flexibility in my campaigns and in my performance structure to move up and down the funnel. So I always want to have the flexibility to either target the top end or the mid or the bottom, depending on what is working for different business categories, right? And I think the third thing is that I've always, when you come up against a wall, I think there are innovative solutions like looking at third-party data platforms, right?
Yes.
Can I use a third-party, we've used Reserve in the past,
Yes,
etc. There
yes.
are other platforms as well. Can I use a third-party data platform? Can I build in more signals? And that requires opening your mind a little.
External
because,
intelligence is what they feed in. Yeah.
Because it's only limited by as much as you, you can be very creative and you can put in a lot of signals into your campaigns, which will again help pick up the pace and scaling of the campaign, right? So I think those are some of the things that I think one has to think about when one comes up against, issues or roadblocks.
Very rightly said. We also come across with across many clients wherein they've exhausted signals. Okay, consumer is everywhere, right? Meta, Google, Snapchat, across. But signals is something. The consumer intelligence is something which brands are looking out now, and that becomes a challenge. Okay, somebody wants to reach out to a very specific audiences. Where do we go, right? While we have a solution now, but that's Audience Pro. But yeah, you need to have those signals readily available, which can be targeted across the platforms, right? So yeah, I'm sure everyone, each one of you would have enjoyed this session. Any Q&A for you, any queries, any questions from the experts which you have, which you would like to ask anyone?
Okay, so if anyone has any questions, you can just raise your hand and we'll take up 1 or 2 questions. And I think it is one of the most inspiring sessions, I must say. So, anybody? Anyone? Okay, I think everyone.
Yes, Parth. Yes.
I really liked this point that she mentioned about the creatives bit. So I have a theory on this that audience targeting is pretty much getting automated either through multiple tools or what Meta is doing. So more than thinking about targeting, work on width of creatives. What I've realized is that if you have width of creatives, that's probably the best market research tool also for you. Because if you ask a customer, why are you buying an earbuds? They can almost never honestly answer this. And you can never frame a non-leading question. But when things go out in form of creatives, the one which gets, let's say, the lowest CPM, the highest engagement, is spot on with the reason that you're looking for. And if it keeps scaling without CPMs going too high and engagement holding up, that kind of defines the market size of that point. So looking backwards, like, of course, you are figuring out CAC on the process, but it's probably the most neutral market research can also do.
Yes. No, rightly said, yeah. That. Anyone
No,
else?
I'll add on. Me.
Yeah.
So, also an interesting point, right? When we come to creative, we recently identified this was that generally we do influencer marketing, and we as Tira, when we started, right? Because we have brand aesthetics, we have a very specific guardrails in terms of how our tone of voice should be, right? Because that's how Tira is differentiated, amongst within the industry. If you look at Tira app today, it's very different. The experience is very different, right? It's elevated. So we obviously wanted to always convey that to the consumer, and therefore what we started with was the influencers that we used to always get onboarded, right? We had specific guardrails, we had specific guidelines for them that, okay, this is what you need to do, this is what, the aesthetics should be at par, right? That was it. However, recent times, because this was a suggestion that I was reading through, and of course, because I always have this in mind, as a consumer, I'm not understanding what you're trying to say, right? Let's talk to the consumer, and recently we did a campaign with Jose. It was a Father's Day campaign. First of all, kudos to the team who actually thought of him, and we got him on board. And the concept was too cool, right? And the only thing, because we were going to run that ad on performance, right? So my only ask was, let's stay true to the influencer content type or style, right? Let's stay true to that. Let's not give him any guideline, nothing. Just tell him this is what we are coming up with. And let him do what he wants to do. And he came up with a concept, of course, with the team in conjunction, and it worked wonders. It just did, and it's a Father's Day campaign, and and it was so engaging, and there was no hook in the first 5 seconds to like up to 50% off, 30% off, no offer call out. The only thing that he went around asking everyone was, "आपको पता है 20 जून को क्या है? 20 जून को क्या है?"
Making them curious about it.
Yeah, and no one knew that it was Father's Day, because
Father's
everyone remembers a Mother's Day, but no one remembers a Father's Day. Very sad. Right. But that's what the hook was. So at the same time, what we also realized, a hook doesn't have to be contextual. Right. It can be anything that is giving a reason for a consumer to stay back on. It could be a visual hook. it could be a dialogue hook, it could be literally a dress up or a, you know, something to relate it to the attire or to how the influencer is behaving or talking, right? That also could be the hook, right? So that also was a learning for us. That
Freedom
I
for
think,
content creation plays very important role.
yeah.
In my past organization at Z and 9XM, Big FM, we've given that freedom to, we used to not call them influencers. For us, it was like celebrity
Yeah.
collaborations and all. वो
Yeah.
time पे वही word use होता था. Now it's more of influencers. But yes, freedom for content creation is very
Yeah,
important.
very
We used to work with Nilesh Mishra. The moment we used to brief him, he used to be like, hello, give me my space.
I know my job.
I know what's to be done. And then we used to make the creatives out of it, audio creators, publish it.
Yeah,
and all
see,
that.
we also have guardrails, right? As a brand, we always know what is the output that is required, but sometimes probably an influencer knows better
Yes.
on how to drive
Yes.
what is required. The basic thing that is required is engagement. Baki to aata rahega.
Yeah.
That's what
Very
happened with
important
Vijay
nuance.
Sales, right?
Yes,
So,
yes. So let's and in this session, I'm sure everyone would have. There's another question, I guess. Yeah. There are two questions now.
Hi, so I'm also from the brand side, right? I'm a marketing manager as well, and I'm just kind of trying to, I think the question goes to both Paras and Prajakta, continuing on this whole creative journey where there's this whole conversation of AI coming in, right? So for a brand like Paras's, AI becomes one of the key tools that you use to create, you know, great creatives on the go. But at the same time, for Prajakta, keeping that brand identity in mind, how do you kind of balance out both, right? And where does the human element sort of continue to come in? I think the point that I'm trying to make is there is obviously the automation that's coming in, but then where is it that as a marketer we add value in the creative process?
see, AI now has become quite advanced even in the creative world, right? Especially with VO3 coming. It really does a great job, and we are starting to implement it. We think that it will be a game changer, and I don't think, because even the consumer knows that this is AI driven. Recently,
Yeah.
I was seeing an ad from 1MG. Earlier, they were not using AI, but now they use only AI models. Only AI, and it's clearly seen, but I don't have a problem with that because I'm only checking what the brand is for and what the messaging is, and it's getting conveyed to me. In terms of balance, I think because we have not tried this out as yet, and to that of an extension, hopefully once we try it, we will always keep the human element. So basically, I feel the balance can be achieved when you give them a base key visual, right? So you tell the AI that, okay, this is my visual, key visual. Now you adapt it in multiple formats, multiple age brackets. What should the communication be? But your base is the crux of everything. So
Yeah.
that could be the balance that you could create.
Right. Also, just to add, while AI is making a lot of noise, I feel the input that is basically the intelligence or the data or the human touch is very important, without which AI would not function, right? You need to add something. Even when today we use ChatGPT, we need to input something there, right? So without the human touch, without any input signal, there's no output to it, right? Just a refined output is what I feel that AI brings.
I can jump in since we're not going anywhere. So, it's where human comes in is like before, if you could write a good creative brief, you can prompt a good creative brief now. And then you're going to get that much of a better.
Yes.
There's limitations to what AI can do today, even. And like she said, you can clearly make out it's a AI ad, but consumers may or may not care about it so much. I've also seen in our performance marketing, we've switched completely to AI-driven, AI video, AI creative performance marketing. And there's been no difference at all between when we used to make videos versus when we make AI-driven videos. So the point is that maybe beyond performance, when you're looking at AI creating more communication for you, pretty much like how you write a good brief with what is the tension, what is the creative insight, what is the, how is your product solving it, what is the RTB, etc. We've done that with the prompting, and it does turn out a much better output. So I think that's again where the human element right now is very strong. Right?
I guess there's one more question.
Yeah, so thank you so much for the insights. So one thing which I want to understand from you guys is, so one thing which I struggle to do as well is, so we are a B2B firm, and how to, so in terms of digital marketing, how to decide what is the correct marketing channel to use and what is the correct way to reach to our customers. So that is something which I would like to hear your thoughts on.
Anyone who would want to pick
Uh, so we have this thing internally where we say test is greater than taste. So just test everything out with money you can afford to lose. Very small, even 1,000 per day is good enough to test out a channel. And just know all the channels, test all the channels. Do not overthink this. What worked for someone else might not work for you. And if it has worked really well for them, the chances are higher that it will never work for you. So you have to actually test a lot of things. That's the simplest and probably the most on point advice you can get.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it's driven a lot by who you're talking to. Like you said, you're a B2B, you're working for a B2B company. Who are your customers, the other businesses, who are they? If you go back to the basics, it's about what platforms and media do they consume, right? Where are they? For now, there might be a variety of platforms and media that they consume. Once you've got those down, you then, as Paras said, you can test between them, right? To see which one is performing more, where do they pay more attention. Some products are, it again depends, it's not an easy question because it's, again depends on, is your proposition easy to explain or not? If your proposition is very simple, easy to explain, you need a more awareness kind of a push around it, right? If your proposition is more difficult to explain, you need engagement on your communication to the customer that you have, right? Then your media choices change accordingly, right? So I think it's an interplay of these different factors, but really once you've narrowed them down, then testing between them to see what gives you the maximum lead generation is actually critical for your business, right? Because that's how you get to B2B sales. So you would be looking at what is the best cost per lead or something like that. And that's what you'd be testing your different channels on.
Yeah, and when you're testing it, like he said, right, test even 1,000 rupees, stick to one metric, only one metric. Don't go beyond all the metrics, okay? That you will actually get lost within that hole, right? So don't do that. Stick to one metric. It's CPL, then stick to CPL. If it is D0 CPL, stick to that. But set that in mind that this is the only thing that I'm going to look at and take decisions accordingly. If it is CTR, it's fine. It's just be that. But stick to that. Do not think that, okay, mera CTR itna upar hai, lekin mere spends kam hai. Something like that, right? Compared to other creative or whatever. Or for example, CPM बहुत ज़्यादा है, spends बहुत ज़्यादा ले लिया है, but your metric is something else. CPM is the metric. So make sure that you stick to one metric only when you are testing it.
I have a solution, in fact. And yeah, solution is Audience Pro. Basically, it has B2B signals also, right? Siddharth touch base that there are external forces which have additional signals, which Meta, Google would also collaborate and take it. So we do have those signals. You can touch base later.
Sure, I'll get in touch with you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Because they have businesses on their database as well, right? Businesses are using telecom as well. And they have signals based from there. So that's another area you can fine tune by using.
Yeah. Cool. Anyone else? Okay, great. So we'll wrap this up. And the key takeaways for us is basically, we've heard from each and everyone various insights of the strategies. What we understand is scaling big is not the only role. Scaling smart is a very important role here. Be it the creative side, be it performance marketing, be it targeting, everyone. So it's a collaborative job, but yeah, scaling smart is the key here. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.